Hello everybody, this is Kiana Mayfield from LibraLunaCenter.com and welcome to your weekly forecast for the week of May 29th through June 4th, 2017. And we start off this week with the moon in Leo. So after this entire weekend with the moon in Cancer opposing Pluto and squaring Jupiter and squaring Uranus and Venus, right? And Venus coming off of its square to Pluto as well. This is a lot of emotional heaviness we've been through. This is a lot of emotional clearing and cleansing and healing of the past karmic cycle we just came out of, right? As Venus prepares to finally leave Aries. And before it does that, it is clearing up the Venus and Aries story that we've been experiencing since February of 2017, right? As well as the Jupiter, the Jupiter retrograde story we've been experiencing as well since February of 2017. That's when all of the action really started happening, right? That's when all the chaos started occurring. That's when all the crazy, out of left field scenarios, the Venusian karmic story we've been experiencing started. It all began there, right? February. And even before then in January, as everything was in shadow. And now, after all the craziness, after all the upheaval, I know they say this every week, as if every week is a sigh of relief. And there's always a new challenge right after that, right? But this is the clear-cut end of the Venus and Aries story. This is the clear-cut, sudden uprising from everything we've been experiencing, right? And so we start off this week with the moon in Leo, with our heart, with our inner child, with our courage to face the future, right? And from Monday through Wednesday, from the 29th through the 31st, we will be having the moon in Leo, and it will go over for the first time since the North Node came into Leo, right? It will conjunct the North Node exactly at 27 degrees. And as this happens, Mars in Gemini will be at 27 degrees, an exact sextile to it, right? Just coming off of its opposition to Saturn. It's still opposing Saturn, but it is coming off of it slowly. So as we face our own limitations, it's like, okay, there's more than one way to deal with our limitations, right? At the same end of the stick, however, we have Mars squaring Chiron, exactly. Chiron in Pisces at 28 degrees. But at the same time, Mars will also be in sextile to Uranus and Venus as Venus approaches Uranus and prepares for the conjunction, right? And as all of that happens, Mercury in Taurus will be an exact trine to Pluto, 18 degrees. So, from Monday through Wednesday, when I was channeling the energy for the week, as I wrote this report, I got heat flashes. We're on fire for something, right? It's time to set ourselves on fire for what we want to create, right? As the moon crosses over the North Node for the first time since it entered Leo, right? And throughout this whole year, thus far, even though we're almost at the midway point of 2017, as you look at the energy, it's almost as if 2017 hasn't really begun until May of 2017, right? Even though, our regular calendar says it starts in January, but there was so much Piscean energy from January through February, right? With the solar eclipse in Pisces on the South Node. And there was a lot of karmic clearing that needed to be processed, right? And it came out in all sorts of different ways, right? It came out in a subconscious way, to the point where our present actions, even though we thought we were moving forward, it was actually a way of processing our own emotional past, right? Our own emotional healing that needs to take place, right? We were taking a step forward through taking several steps back, right? Piscean energy, But even with the astrological new year that began March 20th of 2017, even though that can symbolize the start of the new year as well, the new moon in Aries that occurred during that time, even though, a new moon in Aries is the start, it is the seed of the entire year up ahead, right? But it was conjuncting Venus in retrograde. So we've just come out of all of the retrogrades that occurred throughout the start of this whole year, right? We're just coming out of the Venus retrograde story. We're just coming out of the Mercury in retrograde, 2 Mercury retrogrades from the start of this year, right? And Jupiter in retrograde. So, with the moon in Leo going over the North Node now, and all of the coming out of the shadow periods of all these retrogrades, it's as if our heart and our throat chakras are activated. That's what I'm feeling for this week, right? The beginning of this week, as Mercury is in trine to Pluto exactly as well. Our power and our courage is coming back online, right? We are clear of all the fog that transpired throughout the beginning of 2017 thus far, right? It was kind of like an overflow of the previous year of 2016, right? An extension of it. And so now that we're out of it, now that our power is back online, and with Mars in Gemini, ready to explore all types of new things, ready to expand its horizons, right? Ready to expand its consciousness, expand its mind, discover new things, venture into entirely new territory as it's opposing Saturn, our reality, right? It's furthest away from Saturn. It is looking at the journey with a completely objective view, right? Like, you're going to go, you're going to travel on this mountain, right? You're going to climb this mountain, Sagittarius. You have the vision for what you want to create in your reality. That is Saturn in Sagittarius, right? Mars in Gemini opposing it, furthest away from it, right? Is saying, okay, there are multiple different ways you can get to this mountain. There are multiple different avenues you can use to find your way there, right? And some ways are better than others. Some ways are locked at the moment, and some ways are wide open right in front of you. You want to use your mind, you want to use your logic, you want to use your natural, innate, born curiosity to choose which roads you want to lead you to this mountain. But as it's in square to Chiron, this is a major decision point of if we are going to choose if we are in charge of our own healing process or not. Are we going to continue to wait for a savior? Are we going to continue to wait for something to fall out of the sky? Are we going to continue to blame our circumstances, blame our old wounds and everything that we think is a flaw within us, everything that we think is a defect or an inhibition or even just, a subconscious blockage that prevents you from moving forward in your life? Right? Are we going to continue to use those same excuses? Or are we going to be courageous? Are we going to switch into another role? Gemini, right? The twins. There are two sides to who you are right now. There is the side of you that has been living in suffering for so many years. That is one aspect. That is the twin you've been living in, right? As we are going through the Gemini season, this is all about choosing which twin we want to be. And there is another twin. And the new moon in Gemini last week gave us a glimpse of this twin, right? Gave us a glimpse of this other half of ourselves that is living in the light, that has known the light, that wishes to be in the light, right? That wishes to create in the light and explore. And for the past 5 years, right, since the portal opened in 2012 to this other twin aspect, right, it's almost as if we haven't necessarily been able to live fully into the light side, right, the light twin that we are discovering now. We've been stuck in the darkness. We've been stuck in suffering. And the full moon in Scorpio, as the North Node into Leo, was like the final piece of that, the final word, the final exhale, the last words of that dying twin, right? We no longer need to live in suffering anymore. Saturn is no longer in Scorpio, right? We're past that story now. And with Mars in square to Chiron, this is all about taking charge of our own healing process. It's about saying, okay, I know I have my own limitations. I know I have my own subconscious fears, but there are ways that I can work through them, right? And it requires me to come out of my comfort zone. It requires me to expand my horizons, expand my circle, even completely enter into a new environment, right? In order to get a different result, I have to be a different person. I have to completely change my day-to-day reality, right? I need to be different before I can expect anything around me to change. And with Mars in sextile to Venus and Uranus, this is about what we want to connect with. This is about being excited for the journey overall. But as it is in opposition to Saturn and square to Chiron, there are important aspects to this journey that we need to come to peace with before we can just go and, choose your own adventure, right? Even though we want to go in a million different directions, even though we want to complete everything right away, even though we want to ascend to the highest level of our lives at this very instant, right? This is more of the transitory period than the destination, right? As Saturn is still retrograde. And there's a lot of healing that needs to take place still, right? And the best way to accomplish that is through coming out of your comfort zone, taking a risk, taking a leap of faith, going where you've never been before, right? Doing something you've never done before, being somebody you've never thought you could be before. And with Mars in Gemini, its ruling planet Mercury is in Taurus in exact trine to Pluto. So our words, how we speak to ourselves internally, as well as how we speak to other people, right? Who we connect with. Communication has the ability to heal our deepest wounds right now. It has the ability to heal our subconscious issues. It has the ability to make peace within our bodies, to heal our issues, right? That are ultimately permeating through our psyches and developing as some type of neurosis, right? Some type of bodily dysfunction. Mercury is in Taurus, so it has to do with something physical. It has to do with our senses and our physical reality and our sense of self-worth in this world, right? As we are living, breathing human beings, right? Many spiritual people forget that as you're going through the spiritual path, there's another side to the coin, right? You still have a body to take care of. You still have a reality to constantly continue to nourish, right? You can't just ditch it. And the act of ditching it is what has kept us feeling stuck, right? It's kept us almost feeling sick, feeling heavy. And with Mercury and trine to Pluto, this is a whole new way of processing, right? That we are receiving. This is a whole new way of talking to ourselves. This is a whole new way of talking to other people. And what you say to people and what they say to you has the ability to change your world. It has the ability to spark something. It has the ability to heal the subconscious issues that are affecting your body, your self-esteem, and your finances, right? Your physical reality. And ultimately it can cause you to come inwards, call you inwards to come to peace with yourself and the other people around you, right? So with the Mars story right now, this is about making our own path, right? As Mars is in Gemini. But it's also not about creating more karma, right? We don't want to create any more wounds than we've already been dealing with. We don't want to create any more baggage than is necessary, right? It's about, as Mercury is still in Taurus, the ruling planet of Gemini, right? And we're in Gemini season right now. It's still keeping things simple. It's still keeping things close to home, right? So with the moon coming over Leo, or coming over the North Node in Leo for the first time, we know our hearts now, right? The bottom line is that through everything we've been through through all of the chaos, through all of the turmoil, through all of the sudden changes of direction, and through all of the evolution that we've experienced within ourselves these past few months, right? There is one unchanging thing within us all that never changes, never will change, never can change, and that is our heart, right? That is the core of our entire orchestration, of our entire being, right? It is our soul. It is our connection to the God force within. And for the first time in a long time, we're finally getting back in touch with that, right? So, from Thursday through Saturday, there won't be much going on. It will be a build up to Saturday, right? The moon will be in Virgo. It'll basically just be getting the details in order before we come to this major breakthrough period, which will happen on Saturday. And on Saturday, the moon will be in Libra, and it will be exactly conjuncting Jupiter retrograde, right? As that happens, the sun will be exactly trining it, 13 degrees. And it will be growing in its applying square to Neptune. On the same day, Venus will be in exact conjunction to Uranus, 27 degrees, right? And it will be in trine to Saturn and sextile over to Mars in Gemini, which is at 29 degrees. And it will be also an exact trine to the North Node in Leo. So overall, this is a very hopeful aspect. This is a very positive, joyful, healing day, right? As the sun is in, positive aspect to Jupiter. It's like the world has opened up again, right? There's limitless potential for, what you want to create in your life, what you want to see in your life, who is in your life, who do you want to be in your life, right? And Venus in exact conjunction Uranus, especially after Venus was just in square to Pluto last week, we went through all that heaviness, right? The emotional, the need to make a commitment or to make a split, right? But mostly the commitment within ourselves, the commitment to ourselves, because Venus is in Aries, the most selfish sign, right? So, in conjunction to Uranus, this is sudden shifts, right? This is things changing out of nowhere. Uranus is very unexpected. And in Aries, it all has to do with this brand new level of self-identity we've been cultivating from since the beginning of this year, right? Since the beginning of the astrological year, especially since Venus was in retrograde, right? We've done a lot of self-work, right? We've completely revamped ourselves, our self-image, our self-talk, our self-identity, right? And we've been kind of stuck in that mode for a long time now. Like, okay, I need to improve this about myself and this and this and this.
And change this. And completely erase that.
It's like, okay, well, where's the reward after all of this? And Uranus can bring things out of left field. It can bring things that you never expected, anticipated. And if you allow it in, it can be a gift, right? It can be a positive surprise, right? Most people think of Uranus as being the planet of, unfortunate surprises, right? Like, I thought this was going to happen, but it didn't happen, or actually this happened instead, and now it's a disaster, right? Uranus has that bad reputation, right? The planet of unexpected consequences. But it will be in trine to Saturn and in trine to the North Node. Exactly, right? And as that happens, the Sun will be in exact trine to Jupiter, with the Moon conjuncting Jupiter. And Mars will be on the very last degree of Gemini, 29 degrees, right? The anaretic degree, the degree of the mastery of Gemini, right? Of the big, higher picture, the image we want for our lives. This excitement in the air, right? And so whatever happens on Saturday, whatever happens in your life with Venus conjuncting Uranus, whatever surprise comes out of the blue, whatever suddenly changes, allow it in, right? Because it's going to have a higher purpose. It's going to have a long-lasting effect in your life. As it's in trine to Saturn, right? And this is the last major aspect that will be made by Venus as it's in Aries, right? So finally, out of the Venus and Aries story, I'm so happy because I have Venus and Aries natally. So I've had 3, Venus returns throughout the beginning of this year. So I'm finally glad to be out of that at long last. And with the Moon in conjunction to Jupiter, retrograde, right? I get a sense of appreciation. I get a sense of, there's a lot of hope in the air, right? There's a lot of, a sense of inner peace, which reflects as outer peace as well. A lot of internal balance within ourselves after these last few months of complete chaos and disruption, right? With the Venus and square to Pluto and Saturn and retrograde, right? It's about compassion, almost forgiveness, and overall, when you get to the core of Venus, it's about love, right? Never mind the surface desires and the next shiny object that comes along that pulls our attraction, right? At the core of Venus is love, because ultimately that's what it hopes to attract in the end, right? It hopes to return to that nature, to that core. It's inspired to pull out the quintessence of every human being, right? And the quintessence of every human being is love, ultimately, right? So this is the forgiveness of what transpired. This is the love through what transpired. This is the expansion of life. And realizing that ultimately, no matter what happens, we have to be grateful for what's in front of us, what we have, who we are, right? And there's no limit to what we can achieve, and we just allow life to be what it is. And Jupiter expands whatever it touches, right? So this is also us realizing that life is bigger than we make it seem. There's a whole world out there of possibility, right? And in that realm of possibility, anything can happen, right? We can become whoever it is, whoever we choose to be. And Jupiter is returning us to our inner balance, our inner harmony, right? And allowing it to reflect in the relationships that surround us. And so, but before that happens, it needs to happen internally. So Saturday is a big day as the Sun is preparing to square Neptune exactly as well. This is about finally making the decision to become our soul-centered twin versus the twin that lived in suffering, the twin that we are slowly peeling off the layers of, right? We are switching sides, we are switching roles, switching stories. Gemini, the twins, right? There's the polarity there, there's the duality there. We've lived in one world our whole life, right? We've lived as one half of ourselves our whole life. Our whole life journey has been just this one palette of our existence, of our character even. And now we're flipping into this entirely new person, into this entirely new role with a whole different set of characters, right? And ultimately this is the journey we've always hoped for. This is the dream we've always had in the back of our minds. This is who we've always wanted to become, right? The person that's been locked away for so very long, right? And this will be emphasized on Sunday, which is when Sun will be an exact square to Neptune, 14 degrees. Mars will be entering Cancer, which slows down the impulses of Mars and Gemini, right? Mars and Gemini wants to tap dance all over the universe and figure everything out with its logical mind and pull from all different types of directions, right? Now we enter Cancer. Mars in Cancer, which it hasn't been in since the summer of 2015. So as that happens, the moon will be in Libra, opposing Venus and Uranus exactly, and Mercury will be building its square to the nodes. So this is the anchoring of our new self, right? This is choosing the twin we are going to become, right? This reverse aspect of ourselves, right? The one that lives in the light versus suffering. And this side of ourselves, this new side of ourselves, is a completely new palette, is a completely new journey, it's a completely new destiny, right? And within that role, it will reflect in our connection to other people and to our connection to ourselves, and as well with our higher selves, right? Our connection to God. Because Neptune is involved. So we can either choose to be the, at this point, right, the final decision maker of who we're going to be, right? We can either choose to be the version of ourselves that lives in the dark, the version of ourselves that waits for a savior to appear, the version of ourselves that whines and complains and believes it is limited in some form, right? Due to its subconscious fears, due to its subconscious limitations, that it can never be more than what it is now. And so it must live in this bubble, right? And wait for the savior to pull out of the bubble. And use grand delusions of, you know, what it knows it can never really achieve, but pretends in order to cope, right? Or we can choose to live in alignment with our higher selves. We can choose to expand our connection to God, the universe, right? And with this reversal of polarity, right? On this side of the story, the one that lives in suffering, we're connected to certain types of people. Certain types of people keep us in that same story, right? And on the other hand, on the other end of the polarity, we're connected to new people. And these people are your soul tribe, right? The ones that pull you up, the ones that lift you up, the ones that are pointing the way towards a brand new story for your life, right? the grand destination that is Saturn and Sagittarius, it's all about choosing who you want to be now. It's all about choosing which side of ourselves we're going to live in for the rest of our lives at this point. Are we going to, because we have been living in suffering, right? We have been living in this side of ourselves, this twin, our entire lives up to this point, right? If we continue to choose to live in this side of the story, nothing is going to change, right? It's going to continue to play out the same way it's always been playing out, because you're still being the same person. You're still in the same frame of mind, frame of mode, right? Nothing can change if you don't change, and you have to decide to make the switch. This is the switchover week. And Saturday is this grand exponential portal being open to allow you to go down that path, to choose that person, to choose that twin, right? And Mars in Cancer, going into Cancer, it slows down the impulses and the scatteredness of Gemini, right? The mental ruminations, right? Now we slow down in our actions. Our actions are guided by our feelings now, right? Mars, the archetype of the warrior, the archetype of the conqueror who goes out beyond the orbit of the sun to conquer new worlds, to demonstrate its willpower, right? In the sign of the home body of Cancer, the crab, the one that is connected to the home, the mother, the chest, the history of our entire human civilization, right? As this happens with Mercury in square to the nodes, right, in Taurus, this is about coming to this deep place within ourselves, right? This is a very emotional week, especially at the end as Mars enters Cancer. It doesn't look like it on the surface. When you look at the week, it looks like there's just a whole bunch of positive things happening, but this is a very emotionally centered week of coming to terms with what we actually feel like we need and want in our lives. That includes who we want to be in our lives. Who do we need? What do we need? What's important to us, right? What makes us feel at home with Mars and Cancer, right? Ultimately, the only thing Mars and Cancer is going to achieve in the end is the return to home, right? Because that's ultimately the destination we're all seeking to return to. Home. It's about coming to the center, back within ourselves. Our own emotions, our own feelings, our own, psychic impressions, our dreams even. And with Mercury in square to the nodes, this is about speaking our truth. This is about not being afraid to want what you want. Not being afraid to live into it, right? As Mercury is ruling this whole entire Gemini season right now. It's about standing up for ourselves, standing up for what we want, what we value, what we cherish in our lives, what we appreciate, what brings us a sense of groundedness, a sense of feeling like home, right? What feels like home to us? Who feels like home to us? In Mars and Cancer, it's also about returning back to what we really feel. And what that means is all of our actions from here on out will be guided by our own, wants and desires, our own emotional needs that makes us feel like we are being fulfilled in our lives, right? So if you've been a banker your whole life and subconsciously you've always wanted to be a poet or a writer or a filmmaker, suddenly you're going to want to switch over to that other twin that's been, silently waiting for you to live in the light this whole time, right? And you're going to want to start going down that path that you've always wanted to go down, right? You're going to want to trust your intuition, trust your feelings, trust where your heart is pulling you towards. And it's not so much about rationality. It's not so much about, even though Cancer is the sign that needs security, it's a sign that needs security. Ultimately, it is cardinal though, right? So we're still heading in a direction, and the direction is inwards. The direction is what makes me feel like a human being, like I'm living into my true potential as a human being, what I've always wanted to do, my intuition, right? We're going into our emotional bodies now. We're going into what makes us human at the core of it all. And what makes us human is things like poetry, things like intuition, things like memory, things like love, things like God. Right? Cancer is the belly of God. And we're getting deep in the belly now. And how deep we go depends on which side of the fence we're going to be on now, which twin we are going to choose to live into. And if we have the courage to speak our truth in the current environments we're in at the moment, right? If they do not match up, if you're surrounded by people who constantly are in support towards this old character, right? This old self that lives in the dark, that represses you, keeps you down, that keeps you living in short of your potential, right? And is comfortable with you being there. You're going to need to have courage to set the record straight. You're going to need to have courage to speak this new level of self-worth you've developed over these past few months, because you're not the same person you were when 2017 began, right? You may not have had the courage back then to say what you needed to say. But after all the stuff we've been through, it's about that time, right? It's about that time to speak it, because you've learned so much about yourself. We all have, right? And ultimately, it's about what is worth it, right? And what's worth it is living in the light, because we've lived in the dark for so very long. The story is over now. With Venus preparing to come out of Aries at long last and come into Taurus, things won't be so chaotic anymore. Things won't be so self-centered, right? And Jupiter preparing to come out of retrograde as well, with the full moon in Sagittarius that will occur next week. This is a completely new world we're entering, right? And as that happens, Mercury will be going into Gemini. So we're going to come out of feeling stuck, right? We've been stuck since this year began. We've been stuck on one single issue of our lives. We've been stuck in one single place, not really able to move forward much, right? Stuck in the past even, right? But now this is the final week where things start to open up. Things are starting to become clear. The Venusian story is pretty much almost over now. And with this new level of self-identity it has taught us, this new level of self-worth, we're going to need to bring that into everything now. Because we're in the transition mode. We are shifting from one end of the stick to the other. This is about getting past our own issues, right? I think at this point we know what it is that we want. We're getting more in touch with our own heart, right? We're getting more in touch with our own intuition, what we feel like we want in our lives, who we want in our lives. And it's not about denying the connection. It's not about using your past wounds as an escape route from connection, right? Ultimately, it's about healing. It's about love through all of the chaos. It's about forgiveness. It's about compassion. It's about inner balance and harmony and peace within ourselves. And allowing that to reflect in everything and everyone we come across. So, thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful week up ahead. I'm going through my own process as well. For the past few years, since the portal began in 2012, I have been personally in a space of almost complete isolation, right? And I feel myself slowly shifting out of that. I'm coming out of this period of being in the dark, right? In my own life. Ultimately, the goal is self-discovery. Ultimately, the goal is to not only live in the light, but live in your highest destiny, live in your highest purpose, right? To get back on track with your soul path. And a lot of us have lost that inner light, that inner fire, that inner sense of direction, right? We've kind of just been wandering aimlessly around. And that's going to be changing, especially this week with everything that's happening on Saturday. And as everything prepares to shift next week as well, with Jupiter coming out of retrograde and Venus coming into Taurus and Mercury in Gemini and Mars in Cancer, all of these drastic changes, right, in our entire approach. And personally, I'm getting ready to go to school, right? I'm taking summer classes, getting back into writing and filmmaking and acting. Things that I low-key have always wanted to explore in the back of my mind, but my dark polarity version has always been in the dark, quiet, preferring to work in the background, right? And that role that I've been playing, I'm finding it no longer fits who I want to be, my ultimate soul destiny and purpose that I want to unfold, right? I'm realizing that I have to live within my own truth, right? I have to follow what I feel called to do, not in a specific timeline, right? Because logic is in the point. With Mars going into Cancer, logic is out the window at this point, except for the Sun in Gemini and Mercury preparing to go into Gemini. That'll be a different story. It'll be a lot of activity and stimulation and communication. But ultimately, our approach will be more intuitive. It will be based on what we feel called to do. It will be based on the need to return to a sense of feeling secure within ourselves, feeling at home with our environment, with what we're doing, right? And not being afraid to go down a completely new path that you have no idea about, but you've always been called to do. This is the call to action. For all the people who are choosing to live in the light, to stand in their role, right? To stand in their power, to stand in their own intuitive knowingness, right? And to be comfortable with this new position that we're being placed in our lives. And these next couple of months are all about just adjusting to the journey, right? Adjusting to this new twin that we're becoming, until the final culmination, which will happen with the solar eclipse in August 2017 in Leo. Master degrees of Leo, that'll be a big story. I'll be back to discuss that when it happens, as we get closer to the energy. But for now, I hope you enjoy your week, and I will see you all next week.